All right, this is just the evidence that exists. You take it or leave it. But we're talking about sea monsters on medieval Renaissance maps. They were on all the maps. Now, this is the Library of Congress. They're trying to decide, why did this happen? Why would they do this? Or were they just crazy people making up cartoons? And once you start to look into these voyages and the survivors of attacks and so forth, you realize that the stories were very, very, very similar. And they lasted for a period of time, and then they sort of diminished. And I think I can understand why they lasted for this amount of time and then they stopped. And I can understand why these creatures did exist. And I believe, yes, they did exist, basically as described. And one of them is a story of, well, I'm going to get into it slowly because it's shocking. At first I thought, that can't be true. But let's start off with where these monsters came from. Because like I say, they're on every map. They're going through it saying, well, what is this all about? This is the Library of Congress. Here's what our anthropology is. Even biology and anatomy and chemistry, all that stuff has to change. Physics, all changed. Speed of light is not constant. They can't back up the Big Bang with any of this stuff because the speed of light isn't constant and this universe is not a vacuum. Light coming through any kind of a resistance slows down. That's what's going on now. And they realize it now. They're saying now that we can see with this Webb telescope, we realize we got to rethink everything. Nothing is right anymore. They realize they're wrong, but they're trying to wiggle through somehow to make it sound like, well, there's a lot more research to do on this, and we got to really think this over. But right now, things look a lot different than we had expected, and they're trying to schmooze into it. There's no schmooze in here. They were wrong, and now they proved they're wrong. All right, so these are kind of maps that they had showing these creatures actually wrapping around boats and eating the sailors in there. Well, here's an actual account, and it was recorded by a documenter that was put on these journeys. They would have somebody that would record every little detail, and that's what they did. And they actually landed on one of these creatures thinking it was a small island. Okay, this is an amazing story because it appears to be documented well, and it goes way back to I think 300 AD, somewhere around there. But it was Saint Brendan. Did he have an encounter with a living island? All right, they were at sea and they were looking to try to put into port somewhere because they were in trouble. And they saw this very small island. They landed on it, and it ended up being a gigantic fish. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm going to show you something that maybe make you think a little different. Now, we're talking about the sea serpents, so just hold on a second. All right, this is a rather good article, and here's what he's talking about: is that this is the voyage of Saint Brendan. All right. Now, it was written down in the 8th or 10th century, something like that. But apparently it was supposed to have happened around 300 AD, I believe. I could be wrong, but here's the gist of the whole thing. He's saying, Lord, you have made so many things. How wisely made them all. The earth is filled with your creatures. There is the ocean, large and wide, where countless creatures live, large and small alike. The ships sail on it, and in it plays Leviathan, that sea monster which you made. And now, there was a time in Catholic circles when the story of Saint Brendan landing on an island that turns out to be a sea monster was told with a straight face. They said, yeah, this is something that happened. And it was recorded by these monks And this was not something that wasn't known by other ones, but it was sloughed off, I guess, most of the time, like these people are crazy. But most of them didn't survive these attacks. They would be eaten, and nobody would ever know about it. Because apparently these sea monsters had this, they were like turtle islands. And they had spikes coming up the sides of the islands. They looked like had trees growing on them. And then they would land on them, and then they'd submerge, and then they'd eat them. It talks about all this, I believe. I'll probably get into that. But this is very interesting, the way he presents this. He's almost making it like a joke. And then he says, well, you take it the way you want to listen to it. So he's talking about this psalm, and then it says, there was a time when it was accepted. And he's saying, I'm not saying I'm necessarily dismissing the story. I'm merely lamenting the change in our society's Christocentric outlook on life. All right? So he says, this has nothing to do with acceptance of science vis-a-vis science. Because science wouldn't be science without such brilliant and devout Catholic scholars as Friar George, such and such Big Bang, Abbot Mendel genetics, strategic dating, John the Baptiste Lamarck, evolutionary theory, Anyway, there's a whole bunch of these deeply religious people and hundreds of other faith-filled scientists. So he's saying, I'm not dismissing them. These people have faith, but they're still scientists. Now he says, rather, it's modernism that makes us presume the supernatural, which the stuff I'm presenting is supernatural. Yes, absolutely. And he's saying it presumes the supernatural is the last thing we should consider when presented with these kinds of mysteries. Now, it is a mystery, but they weren't the only one talking about it. It was talked about in a bunch of places. Now, it says this pseudo-logic is a complete aberration and misapplication of Occam's razor. Well, some of this stuff is hard to understand unless you see, well, what do they mean by Occam's razor? All right, so here's Occam's razor. Pick the simplest solution. If you have two competing ideas to explain the same thing, take the simpler one. Like I say, I can make it hard, I can make it easy. I always make it easy. So modernism makes us presume the supernatural is the last thing. But it is, I'm showing you the evidence of it. So it is, you have to accept it. So it's a complete aberration, a misapplication of Occam's razor. Well, I don't know about that. All I can tell you is that we have become so accustomed to believing that all these people were insane because it's just silly, nothing could be that big, it's just impossible. I have shown you, I believe, that that's just not true. Now the other thing is, these sea monsters, if they were a mile long, you see this, a mile, 1.11 miles up here? Can you see that? Make sure you can. Yes, you can. All right, so 1.1 miles. If you had a little tiny island, 1.1 miles, and a ship pulled up against it, well, they might see it as an island. Well, guess where that island would be if it was on this dragon? Don't forget the dragon starts here, goes all the way to back here. Now, what if that was right there? Right there, that's a mile long. And that could be a tick on this dragon's tail. You wouldn't even know it was there. So when it died, there's no more sucking its blood. They could have a mile, half a mile, 2 miles inside their guts. This thing's over 1,100 miles long. All right, just so you be sure you understand, there is no such thing as a vacuum in space. This is what space looks like. These are all fields, and anything that has to push through these fields is going to bounce through them, and it's going to slow it down. So, space is saturated with this. Plus, it's saturated with dust particles and all the things that spew out from the sun, like cosmic radiation, and which is chunks of particles, not just little light, because they come out in all different sizes. And that's what a coronal mass ejection is. They're huge things, like machine gun bullets coming out. But this is just the nature of space. Light is not going to not slow down. Space is saturated with particles. Light has to get through them. It's slowing down. And they know this now because of the Webb telescopes. You're saying, wow, now they can see further, and they're realizing that they say all of a sudden the light is speeding up going out. No, it's just slowing down faster and faster because they can see further and further. That's all. And it is slowing down probably quite a bit, because space is saturated with particles. And as a matter of fact, well, here's Webb telescope as they rethink of how galaxies form, but here's Fermilab is a quantum foam. Empty space isn't empty. The dizzying display of change out there. Empty space experiences similar activity, subatomic particles winking in and out of existence. These particles are real and have a measurable impact on the universe. That's because as light comes down, bang, 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 and eventually it becomes a cosmic microwave background where it's just sort of drifting around out there, barely moving. So light does not go forever the same speed, and the space is not a vacuum. And here's the particles that I show. These are from Fermilab. This is Fermilab's particles. Exact same particles I show in our research, right here. Here they are again. We found them, we split them. All right, so I'm not going with any of the physics right now. I'm not going with any of the Big Bang Theory, because I can show you light speeds up, light slows down. Big Bang Theory means virtually nothing. And space is saturated with particles and fields. All right, and these things did happen long ago. And they came out of creatures that were gigantic like this. And even at a mile long, something like this here would be the size of the creature. This is his dragon-scaled tail. All right, so that you could get a mile creature is a pretty good-sized creature. And everybody had the same story of these creatures. And what happened was they would come out of the dead gigantic things and go into the oceans. See them coming right off there and go right into the ocean. They'd swim out of their bodies. A mile, that's kind of big. But, think of a T-Rex. All right, a T-Rex, he would not even have any idea a T-Rex was on his body. T-Rex was like, 60 feet long, 100 feet long, whatever they were. He wouldn't even know they were there. It would be like a mite. And then he's going to have other things in his gut living, all kinds of creatures living inside of there. And they all had to come out and go somewhere to try to make a living, and that's where they went. And then the ocean could not provide for them, so they were attacking boats and so forth. But at some point, just the sheer size of them, they wouldn't be able to support themselves anymore. I would imagine that's what happened, because they're either not here at all, or they're just barely here, somewhere here, there, here and there. Like Loch Ness Monster, that could be real. Nobody could say it isn't. But anyway, we're talking about some very, very good-sized creatures, and they would have had parasites and, different things that would have washed into the ocean. All right. The Christian Bible and a lot of the religious texts skipped over all the insane stuff. And when I say insane, I'm talking insane. And the reason they did is because nobody would ever believe it. But I do now believe these things did occur. Sky was the first who ruled over the whole world. So sky surrounded the world. having wedded Earth, he had sex with Earth, and they produced 100-handed, as they are named. These are the names: Brias, Gaius, Codus, who were unsurpassed in size and might, each having 100 hands and 50 heads. All right. After that, Earth bore him the Cyclopses, of whom each had one eye in his forehead. The sky bound and cast into Tartarus, a gloomy place in Hades, as far distant from Earth as Earth is distant from the sky. So he's taken all these monsters and crazy things, and he's cast them down into Tartarus. And then again he begat children by Earth. So Earth has given birth to all of these monsters, which were the Titans, as they are named: Ocean, Coeus, Hypus, Crius, Iapetus. These are moons, and the Ocean, the youngest of all, Kronos, who became the new ruler. Also the daughters, the Titanides, as they're called: Tethys, Rhea, Themis. These are also moons. Earth grieved at the destruction of her children. These were her children, who had been cast into Tartarus. The father, which was Uranus, forced them into Tartarus so they would not come up and kill them. But they did eventually. So Earth was really upset about the destruction of her children. They were cast into Tartarus, persuaded the Titans to attack their father, and gave Kronos an adamantine sickle. And they all of them ganged together, except Ocean, who said, "I'm not going to do it." They attacked their father, and Kronos cut off his father's genitals, threw them into the ocean, and from the drops of the flowing blood were born the Furies, which were these things. And having dethroned their father, they brought up their brethren, who had been hurled down to Tartarus, and committed the sovereignty to Kronos. So now Kronos becomes the king. Now this gets extremely long in detail, but it gets way down here. This is all before Adam and Eve. We had the war of the giants. This was all pre-flood stuff. Then you had Typhon, who was the dragon I showed you. Then came Prometheus, who made mankind, is what they say. And Deucalion was his son, who is Noah. And Prometheus, the father, told Noah, the son, build a chest, stock it with provisions, because Zeus is going to flood the whole world. And that's what Deucalion, who was Noah, did, and he survived. And they go through the whole thing about it. And they also talk about Typhon attacking the giant fish in the desert, which I've shown this. Here's the gigantic fish. Now you can come up here and look at it yourself. And he's spitting out his venom on it, and it's eating right through the fish's back, right down into this bloody tissue down in here. You get a doctor and ask him and say, is that a vein and an artery? All right, here's the arteries. All right, it comes down to here. All these arteries feed all the little tissue, and it comes down to, they get smaller and smaller until they hit the capillaries right here. And then the capillaries dump right into the vein, which is here. And then the vein has all this little webbing around it, which is the lymph ducts. And they suck up all the last of the little fluids before the blood goes back to get reprocessed. This is a factual thing that, as far as I'm concerned, this can be checked in a number of different ways. I can't do it, certainly. But I'm going with this, and I'm going with all the other evidence I have about the things that were written, about what Velikovsky reported, about the light, and I know that the universe is not expanding the way they're talking about. You can see it's saturated with fields. Look at these fields. Light going through those fields is going to slow down. And also, the galaxy is just completely saturated with dust and all kinds of debris. You look out and it's all clouded and all kinds of things going on out there. It's not an empty vacuum by any means. All right, I got to be honest with you. Something makes no sense at all. Because here we got Adam and Eve, supposed to be the first man and the first woman. And then we got all of this stuff prior to Noah. Now, Lamech and this must have been Noah's father, which is Prometheus. In the Greek, we're down here, and all these were giants and titans and stuff. That opens up a whole new doorway. All right, this is a lot deeper than I was really thinking about getting, but we got to get there sooner or later. This is book 1 about the birth of Zeus, the war of the Titans, Olympian gods, the war of the giants. Then we get to Typhon, and then Prometheus is at 7, and Deucalion. Now let's get up to 7, and we'll see what it says about Prometheus, 1.7. All right. This was 1.6.3 was the gods had overcome the giants. Earth was enraged because they had killed all their kids and had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon, who was attacking the gods. And see, when the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. And Zeus pelted Typhon. And then it gets, some of the things don't make sense, but the gist of it does, that they had that fight and he killed Typhon. Now, then it comes down to Prometheus. Now listen to this. Prometheus molded men out of water and earth. That's way down at this, past all of the giants being killed and all that stuff. And his son, apparently, he said here it was, Prometheus molded men out of water and earth, and gave them fire, which unknown to Zeus he had hidden in a stalk of fennel. When Zeus learned of it, he ordered Hephaestus to nail his body to Mount Caucasus, which is in Scythian mountains, and on it Prometheus was nailed and kept bound for many years. Every day an eagle swooped on him and devoured the lobes of his liver, which grew back by night. That was the penalty Prometheus paid for the theft of fire until Hercules came and released him, as we shall show in dealing with Hercules. Now, Zeus was the god of this realm, and he was also a sexual predator, basically. He was after all the women. Now, listen to this. Prometheus had a son named Deucalion, and that's supposedly Noah. He, reigning in the regions about Pythia, married Pyrrha, the daughter of Ephisnus and Pandora, Pandora was supposedly the first woman fashioned by the gods. All right, so Prometheus had created man, and Pandora was the first woman. And Prometheus' son is Deucalion, who is Noah. And here's why I can say he's Noah. When Zeus would destroy the men of the Bronze Age, Deucalion, who is Noah, by advice of his father, Prometheus, constructed a chest. Having stored it with provisions, he embarked in it and Pyrrha, but Zeus poured heavy rain from heaven, flooded the greater part of Greece, and destroyed all the men, and yada, yada, yada. And Deucalion, floating in the chest over the sea for 9 days and many nights, drifted to Parnassus, and there, when the rain ceased, he landed and sacrificed to Zeus. And it goes on and on and on. But this does not fit with what I just showed you for the timeline for Adam and Eve to get down to where Noah is. Something's not right there. All right, so I suppose the point of what I'm talking about today is we got to go back through the whole rethink about Adam and Eve being the first man and woman, and who were these people that were in between when we get to Noah, if Apollodorus was correct. Now, Apollodorus talks about Typhon and talks about a lot of things that make sense to me, but it's kind of crazy, I agree. Now, could these have been the same people that they're talking about? And there's another story in the Sumerian which seems to fit into a lot of this too. So I suppose it's just, I'm going to have to go back and rethink about a lot of this stuff. It gets more and more involved. It's a giant rabbit hole. There's no question about that. But Apollodorus is interesting, and so is the Gospel of Thomas. All right, Jesus said, whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse. Whoever has found a corpse is superior to the world. He also said in number 50, if they say to you, where did you come from? Say to them, we came from the light, the place where the light comes into being on its own accord and established its own self, and became manifest through their image. The only place that light becomes into its own accord and establishes its own self is out of the sun. And it became manifest through their image, their meaning the God's images. Let us make them in our own image. If they say to you, is it you? Say, we are its children, children of the light. We are the elect of the living Father. We are the ones chosen to become life. That's pretty, we have an obligation for that, to live up to what he's hoping for us and what we should do to be part of this elect. We have been chosen specially. If they ask you, what is the sign of your Father in you? Say to them, it is movement and repose. It can do all kinds of things and do energy and all that, and it can just lay there stiff and do nothing. That's what everything is. It can do nothing, or it can have all kinds of energy. And he also said, seek until you can't find. Here it is right. This is supposedly from the Nag Hammadi text, the Gospel of Thomas. The secret sayings living Jesus spoke while he's walking around saying to Thomas, hey, write this down. This is important. Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. An interpretation is try to make up your own mind what he means. And he also said, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all. And all of those things, except ruling over anything, has happened to me. I seeked, and I keep seeking and seeking and seeking. And I found, I think, and I have become troubled, yes. And when I became troubled, I was astonished, yes. And then all ruled over me. So maybe this will change in the next life. I don't know. And I'm serious. There's something's going to happen to you. I don't care what anybody says, no. There's just too much written about this in afterlife, and it can be good or it can be bad. I'm going with good, and I'm going with Jesus Christ. He was the only guy that came down here and didn't start wars and explode people and kill people. And he took what they gave him in so much grace and he said, listen to what I'm telling you. Watch what I do. And don't be violent. And don't be all the bad things. And you can come back and live with me later. You know, it's going to end for you. This is a place for you to learn. If you learn, you can come back and live with me. If you don't learn, you're gone. And that's really the only way you can do it. This is what's called free will. And it's up to you to use that free will to secure a better eternity. That's how I'm looking at everything now. So I'm going to leave it at that. But as far as the Big Bang, it is a big mystery. There's no question about that. Where did it all come from? No clue whatsoever. And I think to myself, I said, if God was able to prescribe all of this stuff, how would he know where he came from? If one day he just showed up with a whole bunch of stuff, I mean, it's a road to madness to try to understand that. That's the big mystery. Where did God come from? Once he's here with all the stuff, well, it's still kind of mysterious, but it's understandable now. It's just nothing but biology. He turned everything into biology, and everything grows and it changes. That's what biology is all about. And it appears that there's rulers that are assigned to regions, and they grow in understanding until they become somebody that has gone through the apprenticeship of understanding what life is all about. And there was something written about Jesus coming to earth to fulfill his final seventh test, which was to actually be a human being and to be exposed to how much violence and nastiness and hatred and all the different emotions that can arise, in order for him to be the kind of ruler that he is when he takes over a complete region in the solar system or in somewhere in the galaxy or whatever he does. Because it sounded pretty interesting to me. I don't know if it's true or not, but that was in some other text that wasn't accepted. I think it was either I can't remember. I'm not going to state what I think because I can't remember. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that for today. It is time to pay attention, I would say, if you're interested. If you're not interested, it says let him who seeks. If you're not seeking, well, it's up to you. But if you are seeking, it's going to be a road that you're going to be on for a while, because there's a lot of seeking to do and there's a lot of finding to do. And you can find it through me. I'm presenting things. I have done the seeking. I've been seeking for a long time. And I have found a lot. And I got to be honest with you, I think there's something special that happened to me for some reason. I don't know what, because I deserve nothing. I can tell you that right now. And it's just happened to me that I can see these things. And it shows exactly what they said, that they will deceive you with the tales they have concocted. And that's about what's happening right now. And the ones that are concocting these tales are the ones that are saying, don't believe in God, don't believe in Jesus Christ, don't believe in that stuff. It's all nonsense. They were all crazy people writing things to scare kids and to make them stay in line and do their homework and be nice little kids. And don't believe it. And now I see that as exactly what was written in the text. They would say that to them. And many will follow, and they'll go. The destruction does not sleep. I'm just telling you what it said in these ancient texts, and they right now ring very, very true to me. So I love you all, and I know this went a little long, but it's an interesting idea about Big Bang versus Big God versus Big Mystery. And there's a lot of mystery here, no question about that. But I'm going with Big God way over Big Bang. All right? I love you all. Bye.